The train pulled into Coldwater Junction 23 minutes late, wheezing steam like a dying animal. Ethan Cole stood on the platform with his hat pulled low, watching passengers stumble out into air so hot it bent the horizon into waves. He wasn't there to meet anyone. He'd come for supplies, fence wire, salt licks, anything that might help him keep 12 head of cattle alive through another week of this hell. But then he saw her. She stood beside the conductor, gripping a leather trunk with both hands while the man gestured impatiently toward the empty platform. Her dress was dark blue, travel-stained, with buttons up to her throat despite the heat. Brown hair pulled back tight, face pale, jaw set. She looked like she was trying to hold herself together by sheer will. "Miss, I can't help you," the conductor was saying. "He paid for your ticket. That's all I know. He was supposed to meet me here." "Well, he didn't." The man hauled her trunk onto the boards with a thud. "This ain't my problem." Ethan turned away. Not his business. He'd learned that lesson the hard way. Caring about other people's troubles just meant carrying more weight than you could bear. He'd carried enough. He started toward the general store, boot heels hollow on sun-cracked wood. "Excuse me." Her voice stopped him. He didn't turn around. "Sir, I'm sorry to bother you, but do you know a man named Thomas Brennan? He was supposed to meet me. I'm his... We were supposed to..." Ethan turned then, slowly. Up close, she was younger than he'd thought. Mid-20s, maybe. Brown eyes that looked like they'd been crying but weren't anymore. Hands still gripping that trunk like it was the only solid thing in the world. "Brennan," Ethan said. The name tasted bitter. "Big fella? Runs cattle north of here?" Hope flashed across her face. "Yes. Do you know where—" "He got married 3 weeks ago, to the Miller girl from Amarillo." The hope died. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there while the truth settled into her bones. "I see," she said finally. Her voice was steady, too steady. "Thank you for telling me." Ethan nodded and turned away again. Behind him, he heard her trunk scrape against wood as she dragged it toward the station bench. The train whistle screamed. Wheels began to turn, pulling the last connection to anywhere else out of Coldwater Junction, leaving nothing but dust and distance and a woman with nowhere to go. He made it halfway to the store before he stopped. "Not your problem," his wife Sarah's voice clear as day in his head. But it could be. He stood there in the brutal sun, jaw clenched, fighting himself. He had a ranch falling apart, cattle dying, debts piling up like storm clouds. He had no business taking on someone else's disaster. But he turned around anyway. She was still on the bench, staring at nothing. The platform was empty now, except for the two of them and the heat shimmer rising off the rails. "You got people you can wire?" Ethan asked. She looked up, startled. No, not really." "Money for a ticket back east?" "I used what I had to get here." Ethan pulled off his hat, wiped sweat from his forehead. This was a mistake. He knew it was a mistake. "Can you cook?" She blinked. "What?" "I got a ranch, 20 miles northwest. House needs work. I need someone who can cook, clean, mend. It ain't charity. You'd be earning your keep. Separate room, decent wages, nothing fancy, but it's something until you figure out what's next." For a long moment, she just stared at him like he might be some kind of mirage. Then, "You don't know me." "No? I could be anyone." "Could be." He settled his hat back on. "But you ain't. You're someone who came a long way for a life that ain't here. Way I see it, you got 2 choices. Sit on this bench until the next train comes through. That'll be Thursday. Or take work where it's offered." He paused. "I ain't him. I ain't making promises, but I keep my word on what I say." She studied his face. He didn't look away. Whatever she was searching for, she must have found enough of it. "My name is Clara Hayes." "Ethan Cole." "I can cook," she said, "and clean. I'm good with numbers. I worked in my father's store back in Ohio before..." She stopped. "Before I came here." "That'll do." "Mr. Cole?" "Just Ethan." "Ethan." The name felt strange in her mouth. "Why are you doing this?" He picked up her trunk. It was heavier than it looked. "Because nobody met you when they should have. And I remember what that feels like." That was all he said. He started walking toward where his wagon was hitched, and after a moment, Clara Hayes followed him into the heat. The wagon rattled northwest through country that looked like it was dying from the inside out. Dried creek beds, mesquite trees twisted into claws, grass so brittle it crumbled under the horses' hooves. They didn't talk much. Clara sat beside him with her hands folded, watching the landscape turn hostile. After an hour, she broke the silence. "How long has it been like this?" "The drought?" Ethan kept his eyes on the road. "Going on 3 years now. Some places got it worse. We're just on the edge of worse." "And your cattle?" "Had near 60 head when it started, down to 12 now. Maybe 10 by next week if we don't get rain." "I'm sorry." Ethan shrugged. "Ain't your fault the sky forgot how to open." Another mile passed, then Clara said, quiet, "Your wife, when did she—" "2 years ago." His voice went flat. "Fever took her. Quick." "I'm sorry." "You said that already." She flushed and went quiet again. Ethan felt the guilt rise in his chest, but didn't apologize. Easier to be hard. Easier than explaining that Sarah had been the only good thing in his life, and when she'd died, she'd taken all the color with her. Left him here, gray and breathing and trying to figure out what the point of any of it was. They crested a low ridge, and there it was, the Double C Ranch, or what was left of it. The house stood in a shallow valley, weathered wood the color of old bone. Barn listing to one side, corral fence patched with whatever scraps he could find. A single windmill, blades barely turning in the still air. Beyond that, pasture that used to be green rolling out toward distant hills. "It's not much," Ethan said. "It's more than I had an hour ago," Clara said. He pulled the wagon up to the house and climbed down. The front door stuck, it always did, and he had to shoulder it open. Inside, dust hung in the slanted light. Sparse furniture, cold stove, table with one chair. It looked like exactly what it was, a place where someone was surviving, not living. "I use the downstairs," Ethan said. "There's a room upstairs, south side. It's clean, mostly." Clara stepped inside, looking around. She didn't say anything, but he saw her take it all in. The dishes piled in the basin, the coat thrown over the chair back, the floor that needed sweeping. The whole place felt like it was holding its breath. "I'll get your trunk," Ethan said, and escaped back outside. By the time he'd hauled it upstairs, Clara had her sleeves rolled up and was already sorting through the kitchen. She'd found a rag somewhere, was wiping down the counter. "You don't have to start now," Ethan said. "I'd rather be useful." She didn't look at him. "If that's all right, do what you want." He left her there and went out to check the cattle. The 12 head were clustered near the stock tank, where the windmill was pulling up barely enough water to keep them alive. They looked like walking bones. Ethan stood watching them, feeling that familiar weight in his chest, the knowledge that he was fighting a losing battle, had been fighting it for 2 years, and didn't know how to stop. When he came back to the house an hour later, the smell hit him first. Coffee. Real coffee, not the burnt bitter sludge he'd been making. And something else. Cornbread, maybe. He stepped inside and stopped. The kitchen was clean. Not perfect, but clean. Dishes washed and stacked, floor swept, table wiped down, with 2 plates set out and 2 cups. Claire stood at the stove, back straight, tending a pan. "I found some cornmeal," she said without turning around. "And beans. I hope that's all right." Ethan just stood there. The house felt different, like something that had been sleeping had woken up. "It's fine," he managed. They ate in silence. The food was simple but good, better than anything he'd made in months. Clara ate carefully, precisely, like she'd been taught proper table manners and couldn't shake them even here. When they finished, she started gathering the plates. "Leave them," Ethan said. "It's no trouble." "Clara." She stopped, looked at him. "Leave them. You've done enough for today." She hesitated, then nodded. "All right." "I rise early," Ethan said. "Before dawn. I'll try to be quiet, but I'm a light sleeper anyway. There's a well out back. Water's clean. Help yourself." "Thank you." They stood there awkwardly for a moment, 2 strangers sharing space they weren't sure how to fill. "Good night," Claire said finally. "Night." She went upstairs. Ethan heard her footsteps overhead, moving around in the room that used to be. He cut the thought off. poured himself another cup of coffee and sat at the table, listening to the silence that wasn't quite as heavy as it had been before. 3 days passed. They fell into a rhythm without discussing it. Ethan woke before first light, dressed quietly, went out to tend the animals and check fences and do the 100 small tasks that kept the ranch from falling apart completely. Clara was always up when he came back, with coffee ready and breakfast cooking. They'd eat, exchange a few words, and then she'd tackle the house while he went back out to work. She didn't push, didn't ask questions, just worked, steady and quiet. By the end of the first week, the house looked better than it had in years. She'd scrubbed floors, mended curtains, organized the pantry, found Sarah's old vegetable garden and started clearing it out, even though the soil was hard as rock. "Won't grow nothing," Ethan told her. "Maybe not," Clara said, pulling weeds. "But trying feels better than not trying." He didn't argue with that. On the 8th day, he came back from checking the north pasture to find her standing in the yard, staring at the barn. "Roof's going," she said. "I know. And the fence on the east side is down in 3 places." "I know that too." She turned to look at him. "When's the last time you had help around here?" Ethan shrugged. "Had a hand 2 years back. Couldn't pay him, so he left. Can't blame him." "You're doing all this alone." "Been managing. Barely." It should have made him angry, but it didn't. It was just true. "I can help," Claire said. "You got your hands full with the house." "The house is clean. I need something else to do or I'll go mad." She gestured at the barn. "I can patch that roof. I helped my father with his store roof every spring, and I can mend fence. It's just wire and posts, isn't it?" "It's hard work." "I'm not afraid of hard work, Ethan." He studied her. The woman who'd stood on that platform with nothing had turned into something else out here. Tougher. More solid. "All right," he said. "We'll start tomorrow." So they did. Ethan showed her how to cut and stretch wire, how to set posts deep enough to hold. She learned fast, didn't complain when the wire bit her hands or the sun beat down. They worked side by side, and for the first time in a long time, Ethan found himself talking. About the ranch, about how his father had built it from nothing, how Sarah had loved the valley even when it was green and beautiful before the drought came. How he'd thought about selling, walking away, but couldn't bring himself to abandon the only thing he had left. Clara listened, and sometimes she talked too, about Ohio, about her father's store, about the man who'd written her letters promising a life that turned out to be lies. "I thought I was brave," she said one afternoon, hammering a staple into a fence post. "Coming all this way. Turns out I was just desperate." "Ain't much difference sometimes," Ethan said. "Maybe." She tested the wire. "Do you ever regret it, staying here, fighting this?" "Every day." "Then why do you?" He looked out at the valley, at the dying grass and empty sky. "Because if I leave, it wins. The drought, the heat, all of it. Sarah loved this place. Leaving feels like I'd be leaving her." Clara was quiet for a moment. Then, "She'd want you to be happy, wouldn't she?" "Happy ain't the point anymore." "Then what is?" Ethan didn't have an answer for that. 2 weeks in, the night started getting cooler. Not by much, but enough to notice. Ethan was sitting on the porch after supper when Clara came out and sat in the other chair, the one he'd brought out from inside a few days ago, because she kept standing when they talked. "I've been thinking," she said. "Dangerous habit." She smiled slightly. "About water. You've got the windmill for the stock tank, but that's barely keeping up. What if we could capture more when the rains come?" "Rains ain't coming. But if they did," Ethan sighed. "I thought about digging a pond. Problem is, the ground's so hard now it'd take months, and I don't have months. Or the manpower." "What about a dam?" He looked at her. "A dam. There's that dry wash that runs through the north pasture. If we built a dam across it, and the rains came, it would fill. Hold water for months, maybe." "You know anything about building dams?" "No, but I can read. And you're good with your hands." She leaned forward. "Ethan, we need something bold, something that gives us a chance. Otherwise, we're just waiting to fail slowly." He wanted to tell her it was a fool's idea, that dams took engineers and money and time they didn't have, that the rains wouldn't come anyway. But something in the way she said it, "We need something bold," made him pause. "I'll think about it," he said. "That's all I ask." That night, lying in bed, Ethan stared at the ceiling and let himself imagine it. A dam. Water held back, waiting. Grass growing again. Cattle healthy. The ranch alive instead of dying. It was a crazy idea, but maybe crazy was all they had left. The next morning, he rode into town. Coldwater Junction was barely a town, more a collection of buildings clinging to existence because the railway needed a stop here. General store, telegraph office, saloon, church, maybe 50 people if you counted the outlying ranches. Ethan went to the general store where old Silas Marsh presided over shelves of supplies like a king over a threadbare kingdom. "Ethan Cole," Silas said, "ain't seen you in weeks. Been busy. Heard you took in a woman. The one Brennan left hanging. News traveled fast. She's working for me." "Uh-huh," Silas grinned. "Sure she is." "I need books," Ethan said, ignoring the implication. "On engineering, building, dams if you got them." Silas's grin faded. "Dams? The hell you need dam books for?" "You got them or not?" "Might have something in back, left over from when the railway was surveying." He disappeared into the back room, came out with 2 dusty volumes. "This is what I got. That'll be $4. Ethan winced but paid. $4 he didn't have to spare. But Clara was right. They needed something bold. He was loading the books into his saddlebag when a voice behind him said, "Ethan Cole, building dams now, are we?" Ethan turned. Victor Hale stood there in a suit too fine for Coldwater Junction, thumbs hooked in his vest pockets. Hale owned the biggest spread in 3 counties, 10,000 acres, 100 hands, money from family back east. He was 45 and looked 10 years younger, with slicked hair and a smile that never reached his eyes. "Just reading," Ethan said, "about dams, on the same creek that runs through my land downstream." Hale stepped closer. "Now why would that be?" "Creek's dry, Hale. Has been for months. But if it rains, that changes, and if you're damming it up on your property, that's my water you're keeping. Ain't your water till it gets to your land." "That's debatable." Hale's smile widened. "You know, Ethan, I've been meaning to talk to you. Your place is struggling. Everyone can see it. I'd like to make you an offer. Fair price for your land. Enough to start fresh somewhere else." "Not interested." "You haven't heard my offer." "Don't need to." Hale's smile thinned. "You're a stubborn man. Your father was stubborn too. Look where that got him." Ethan's jaw tightened. "My father built something worth having. And you're letting it die." Hale leaned in. "Sell to me, Ethan, while you still can. Because if you're planning what I think you're planning, you're going to make this hard on yourself." "Thanks for the advice." Ethan mounted his horse and rode out. Behind him, he felt Hale's eyes following him all the way out of town. Shut. That night, Clara found him at the kitchen table, the dam books spread out in front of him. "You bought them," she said. "Don't mean I know what the hell I'm looking at." She sat down, pulled one of the books toward her. For the next 2 hours they read together, arguing over diagrams and calculations. The dam would have to be earth and stone. They couldn't afford anything else. Pack it tight, angle it right, pray the creek bed was solid enough to hold. "It's going to take weeks," Ethan said finally. "Then we start tomorrow." "Just us?" "Just us." She looked at him across the lamplight. "Unless you're scared." "Terrified." "Good. Me too." And that's how it started. The next morning they rode out to the north pasture, to the dry wash that had once been a creek. Ethan measured and marked while Clara sketched rough plans. They worked through the heat of the day, hauling stone from the hills, digging into the hard earth. It was brutal work. Ethan's hands blistered, then bled, then hardened. Clara's did the same. They'd work until they couldn't lift another stone, then stagger back to the house and collapse. The next day, they'd do it again. The dam grew slowly, a foot at a time, then a yard. Ethan could see it taking shape, this impossible thing they were building with nothing but sweat and hope. And then the threats started. First it was small things, fence wire cut during the night, a water trough overturned. Ethan fixed them and said nothing. Then one morning he woke to find 3 of his cattle missing. He tracked them to the property line and found them shot dead, left in the sun. Clara stood beside him, staring at the bodies. Hale? Who else? We have to report it. To who? The sheriff's in Hale's pocket. Has been for years. Ethan pulled his hat low. This is a message. He wants us to know he's watching. What do we do? Keep building. But that night, Ethan sat on the porch with his rifle across his lap. Clara came out and sat beside him. You think they'll come here? I don't know. I'm not leaving. Didn't ask you to. She was quiet for a moment, then, why did you really bring me here, Ethan? The truth. He looked at her. In the moonlight, she looked like someone who'd been forged in fire, stronger than when she'd arrived. Because you were alone, he said, and I knew what that felt like. And I thought, he stopped. I thought maybe we could be less alone together. We are, Clara said softly. And sitting there in the dark, 2 broken people keeping watch over a half-built dam and a dying ranch, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years. Hope. It was small, fragile, but it was there, and he'd be damned if he let Hale take it away. The dam was 3/4 finished when the riders came. Ethan saw them from a distance, 6 men on horseback, moving slow across the valley toward the north pasture. He was working the dam with Clara, and when he spotted them, he dropped his shovel. Get to the house, he said. What? Why? Clara, go, now. She saw his face and didn't argue. She ran. Ethan walked out to meet the riders. They stopped 50 yards from the dam, 6 men in dusty clothes with hard faces. The lead rider was someone Ethan recognized, Jack Carver, Hale's foreman. Big man with a scar across his jaw. Afternoon, Cole, Carver said. What do you want? Mr. Hale sent us, said to deliver a message. Carver gestured at the dam. That needs to come down. It's on my land. It's blocking water that belongs to Mr. Hale. Creek's been dry for months, ain't blocking nothing. When the rains come, when they come, Carver said, voice hardening, that water flows to Mr. Hale's property. That's the law. Pretty sure the law says I can use water on my own land. Not if it deprives downstream users. Carver leaned forward in his saddle. You're a smart man, Cole. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Ethan looked at the 6 of them. He looked at the dam, 3/4 built, weeks of work, his and Clara's blood in every stone. Tell Hale if he wants this dam down, he'll have to knock it down himself. Carver's face went cold. That's your final word? That's my final word. The foreman nodded slowly. All right then. You made your choice. They turned and rode off. Ethan stood watching them go, heart pounding, wondering if he'd just signed his own death warrant. When he got back to the house, Clara was waiting on the porch, holding his rifle. They're gone, he said. For now. She handed him the rifle. What did they want? The dam down. What did you tell them? No. She smiled, fierce and bright. Good. That night they took turns keeping watch. And the next day they went back to building. The dam had to be finished. Whatever was coming, they'd face it when it arrived, but they'd face it standing. The dam took another week to finish. Every day felt like borrowed time. Ethan would work with one eye on the horizon, watching for dust clouds that meant riders coming. Clara kept the rifle close, propped against whatever she was working on. They didn't talk about what would happen when Hale made his move. They just kept building. The last stone went into place on a Tuesday morning. Ethan stepped back, wiping sweat from his face, and looked at what they'd made. It wasn't pretty. Rough earth and stone packed tight, angled just enough to hold back water if it ever came. But it was solid. It would work. Clara stood beside him, hands on her hips. Her dress was filthy, her hair falling loose from its pins. She had a bruise on her cheek from where a rock had slipped, and her hands were wrapped in cloth because the blisters had gotten so bad they wouldn't heal. We did it, she said. We did. Think it'll hold? Only one way to find out. She laughed, short and breathless. Then she turned to him, and her face went serious. Whatever happens now, Ethan, I want you to know I don't regret this, any of it. Me neither. They stood there in the morning light, 2 people covered in dust and blood and exhaustion, And for a moment, Ethan let himself feel something close to pride. They'd built something. Against all odds, against common sense, they'd done it. Then he saw the dust cloud. It was coming from the south, moving fast. Too many riders to count from this distance, but enough that his stomach dropped. "Get to the house," Ethan said. "No." "Clara, I said no." She picked up a shovel. "Whatever this is, we face it together." He wanted to argue, but the riders were already close enough to make out. At least a dozen men, maybe more. Hale rode at the front on a black horse, dressed like he was going to a business meeting instead of starting a war. They pulled up 30 feet from the dam. Hale dismounted slowly, making a show of looking at their work. His men fanned out behind him, hands resting on gun belts. "Well," Hale said, "you actually did it. I'll admit, I'm impressed." "State your business," Ethan said. "My business is that dam." Hale pointed at it. "It's illegal. You're impounding water that belongs to downstream users, namely, me. Creek's been dry for 3 years. But it won't always be, and when the rains come, you'll be stealing water that flows through my property." Hale smiled. "I've got a court order right here saying you need to tear it down, signed by Judge Morrison yesterday." He pulled a paper from his coat. Ethan didn't need to read it to know it was real. Morrison was Hale's man, same as the sheriff. "And if I don't?" Ethan asked. "Then my men will do it for you." Hale folded the paper back into his pocket. "Or we can settle this another way. I'll give you $2,000 for your land. That's generous, considering the shape it's in." "Not selling." "3,000. "No." Hale's smile faded. "You're making a mistake, Cole." "Won't be my first." When for a long moment, Hale just stared at him. Then he looked at Clara, really looked at her for the first time. His expression changed to something uglier. "This is about her, isn't it? You think playing hero for some desperate woman is going to save your pathetic ranch?" He laughed. "She'll leave the moment things get hard. Women like that always do." Clara stepped forward before Ethan could stop her. "You don't know anything about me," she said, voice shaking with anger, "or what I'll do. I know you came here to marry a man who didn't want you. I know you're working for this fool because you've got nowhere else to go." Hale's voice was cruel now. "When he loses everything, and he will, where do you think you'll end up? Back on a train platform with a trunk and empty promises?" Clara's face went white. Ethan moved between them. "That's enough." "Is it?" Hale looked past him at Clara. "Think about it, girl. You're tying yourself to a sinking ship. Walk away now while you still can." "I'm not going anywhere," Clara said. Hale shook his head. "Then you're as stupid as he is." He turned back to Ethan. "You've got until Friday to tear that dam down. If it's still standing when I ride through here again, my men will handle it, and they won't be gentle about it." He mounted his horse. His men followed suit. "One more thing," Hale said, looking down at them. "You touch one hair on my men's heads while they're doing their legal duty, I'll have you arrested for assault. And then I'll take this land for the back taxes you owe anyway." He tipped his hat mockingly. "See you Friday, Cole." They rode off, leaving nothing but dust and the sound of hoofbeats fading into silence. Ethan stood staring after them, fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white. Beside him, Clara was shaking, not with fear, but with rage. "He can't do this," she said. "He can. He's got the judge, the sheriff, probably half the county in his pocket." "Then what do we do?" Ethan looked at the dam. 3 weeks of work. Their blood and sweat and hope built into every stone. If Hale's men tore it down, they were finished. The ranch would die slowly, and eventually he'd lose it anyway, to debt, to drought, to Hale's money buying up everything around him. "We defend it," Ethan said. "How? It's a dozen armed men against the two of us." "I don't know yet." He turned to her. "But I'm not letting him take this without a fight. If you want to leave, Clara, if you want to get on a train and go somewhere safe, I won't blame you." She looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "After everything we just built? After what he just said to me?" She shook her head. "I'm staying, and we're going to figure this out." That night, they sat at the kitchen table with a lamp between them, trying to come up with a plan that didn't end with them dead or in jail. "We could warn them off," Clara said. "Meet them before they get to the dam." "With what? Harsh language?" Ethan shook his head. They've got numbers and guns and the law on their side. Then we need to change one of those things. Can't change the numbers, can't change the law. What about the town? Clara leaned forward. Not everyone loves Hale. There have to be people who'd stand with us. Most folks in Coldwater are scared of him, or owe him money, or both. But not all of them. Ethan thought about it. Silas Marsh at the general store. He'd grumbled about Hale plenty of times. The Johnsons, who ran a small spread east of town, had lost their water rights to Hale 2 years back. Maybe there were others. People who'd been stepped on and were tired of it. Even if we found people willing to help, Ethan said slowly, what are we asking them to do? Stand in front of armed men and hope nobody gets shot? I don't know. But doing nothing means we lose for sure. Clara reached across the table and took his hand. Her fingers were rough from work, the same as his. We have to try, Ethan. He looked down at their hands, then up at her face. When had she stopped being a stranger? When had this become about more than just a job and a place to stay? All right, he said. We'll ride into town tomorrow, see who'll listen. The next morning, they took the wagon into Coldwater Junction. The town looked even more tired than usual in the harsh sunlight. Buildings leaning, paint peeling, the whole place hanging on by its fingernails like everything else out here. They started at the general store. Silas was behind the counter, sorting through a delivery of canned goods. Back already? He said when they walked in. That dam causing you trouble? About to, Ethan said. He explained the situation. Hale's ultimatum, the court order, Friday's deadline. Silas listened, face getting grimmer with each word. When Ethan finished, the old man let out a long breath. That son of a bitch, he muttered. Pardon my language, ma'am. I've heard worse, Clara said. Thing is, Silas continued, I'm not sure what you expect me to do about it. I'm just a shopkeeper. Hale controls half my supply lines. I'm not asking you to fight, Ethan said. Just wondering if you know anyone else who might be tired of Hale running things his way. Silas was quiet for a moment. Then, the Johnsons. Maybe the Pratts. Old Ben Miller's got no love for Hale after what happened with his daughter. He paused. But you're asking people to risk a lot, Ethan. Hale doesn't forgive. I know. Do you? Because once you start this, there's no going back. Ethan met his eyes. I'm already past that point. Silas nodded slowly. All right. I'll talk to some folks. No promises. That's all I'm asking. They left the store and headed to the Johnson place, a small ranch east of town that was barely holding on. Mary Johnson answered the door, a tired woman in her 40s with work-worn hands and suspicious eyes. Mr. Cole, she said. What brings you here? Ethan explained again. Mary listened without expression, but her husband Tom came to the door halfway through and his face darkened. Hale! Tom spat the name like poison. That bastard took our water rights 2 years ago, left us with barely enough to keep our stock alive. I remember, Ethan said. I'm sorry I didn't help then. Wasn't your fight. Maybe it should have been. Ethan looked at both of them. I'm not asking you to pick up guns, but if there were enough people standing together, showing Hale that we're not going to let him control everything, maybe that changes the math. Mary and Tom looked at each other. Some silent conversation passed between them. We'll think about it, Tom said finally. That's all I can ask. They hit 3 more ranches that day. Got similar responses. Sympathy, anger at Hale, but fear too. Fear of losing what little they had left. By the time the sun was setting and they headed back to the ranch, Ethan felt the weight of it settling on him. Nobody's going to help, he said as they rode. You don't know that. I do. They're scared, and they should be. Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then, what if we went to the territorial governor? Hale can buy a local judge, but surely governor's 300 miles away. We've got 3 days. Then what? Ethan didn't answer because he didn't have one. That night he couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios in his head. None of them ended well. Finally, he gave up and went downstairs. Clara was sitting at the table, fully dressed, staring at nothing. Can't sleep either? Ethan asked. No. He poured himself water from the pitcher, sat down across from her. The lamp between them cast shadows that made the room feel smaller, like the walls were closing in. I keep thinking about what Hale said, Clara said quietly. About me leaving when things get hard. Don't listen to him. But he's right, isn't he? I came here running from one bad situation. What's to stop me from running again? You're still here. For now. She looked up at him. Ethan, what if this goes wrong? What if we lose everything? Then we lose everything. Just like that? Just like that? He leaned back in his chair. I've been losing things my whole life, Clara. My mother when I was 12, my father 5 years ago, Sarah 2 years back. This ranch has been dying piece by piece since the drought started. He met her eyes. One more loss won't kill me. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Maybe, but it's also freeing. When you've got nothing left to lose, you can do things that scared you before. Clara shook her head. You have something to lose. This place. Your father's work. Sarah's memory. Sarah would tell me I'm being an idiot, fighting over a piece of dirt that might not be worth saving. He smiled slightly. She was practical like that. But you loved her. I did. And you stayed because of that love. Ethan didn't answer right away. Then, I stayed because I didn't know what else to do. Leaving felt like admitting I'd failed. But now, he looked toward the window, toward the dark shape of the valley beyond. Now, I think maybe I'm staying because of something else. What? He looked at her. In the lamplight, she looked young and fierce and terrified all at once. Because you're here, he said, and for the first time in 2 years, that matters. Clara's breath caught. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then she reached across the table and took his hand again, and this time she didn't let go. Thursday morning came too fast. Ethan woke to find Clara already up, dressed, standing on the porch with his rifle. What are you doing? He asked. Keeping watch. It's Thursday. They're coming tomorrow. Maybe. She didn't lower the rifle. Or maybe Hale sends someone early to catch us off guard. Ethan stepped out beside her. The valley was quiet, bathed in early light. Nothing moved except the windmill blades turning slowly. I've been thinking, Claire said, about what we do when they come. And? We don't fight them. We talk to them. Ethan frowned. Talk? Most of those men, they're just ranch hands. They work for Hale because they need the money. They're not evil. They're just following orders. She finally looked at him. What if we reminded them that they're people? That they have a choice? You think words are going to stop a dozen armed men? I think words might reach them in a way guns won't. She gripped the rifle tighter. We can't win by force, Ethan. We both know that, but maybe we can win by making them see what they're doing. It was a crazy idea, but then again, so was building a dam in the middle of a drought. All right, Ethan said, we try it your way. But if shooting starts, then we run. I'm not dying for a dam. Good, because I'm not letting you. She smiled at that, small and sad. Getting protective in your old age? I'm 34. Like I said, old. Despite everything, Ethan laughed. That afternoon, a rider came up the valley road. Just one man, alone. Ethan recognized him, Pete Wilson, one of the younger hands from Hale's spread. Maybe 22, with a sunburned face and nervous hands. Mr. Cole, Pete called when he was close enough. Got a message from Mr. Hale. Let's hear it. Pete shifted in his saddle. He says if you tear down the dam yourself by sundown today, he'll drop the whole thing. No charges, no trouble. You can keep your land. And if I don't? Then we come tomorrow morning, first light. Pete looked uncomfortable. He said to tell you he's bringing 20 men. Said to make sure you understand what that means. 20. Ethan felt his stomach drop. That wasn't a work crew. That was an army. You tell Hale the dam stays, Ethan said. Pete nodded slowly. I figured you'd say that. He hesitated. For what it's worth, Mr. Cole, I don't like this. None of us do. But jobs are scarce, and Hale pays well. I understand. Do you? Pete's voice was almost pleading. Because tomorrow, when we come, I don't want anyone getting hurt. If you just let us do our job, the dam stays, Ethan repeated. Pete's shoulders slumped. All right, I'll tell him. He started to turn his horse, then stopped. There's another thing. Off the record. What? Some of the boys, we've been talking about what Hale's doing, buying up all the water rights, squeezing folks out. He looked Ethan in the eye. We know it ain't right, but we got families to feed. I know that too. Just thought you should know. We ain't monsters. Pete tipped his hat and rode off. Clara came out from where she'd been listening inside the house. 20 men, she said. Yeah. We're going to need a miracle. Or a very good speech. That night, neither of them slept. They sat together on the porch, watching the stars wheel overhead, and talked about everything except what was coming. Clara told him about Ohio, about her father's store, about the town she'd left behind, about the man who'd written her letters promising a life that turned out to be lies. His name was Thomas, she said. He wrote beautifully, made everything sound like an adventure. She laughed bitterly. Guess he found his adventure with the Miller girl instead. His loss, Ethan said. You think so? I know so. She leaned against his shoulder. They sat like that until the sky started to lighten in the east. It's almost dawn, Clara said. Yeah. They'll be here soon. Yeah. She sat up, looked at him. Whatever happens today, Ethan, I want you to know something. What? I'm glad I met you. I'm glad I stayed. Even if everything falls apart, I'm glad. Ethan reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His hand lingered against her cheek. Me too, he said. Then they heard it. The sound of horses. A lot of horses. They stood and walked to the edge of the yard. In the growing light, they could see the dust cloud approaching from the south. It looked like the whole horizon was moving. That's more than 20, Clara whispered. Ethan counted as they got closer. 30 men, maybe more. All mounted, all armed. Hale at the front in his fine suit, looking like he was leading a cavalry charge. He brought an army, Ethan said. Then we face an army. They walked together down toward the north pasture, toward the dam. The riders spread out in a semicircle surrounding them. Hale dismounted, flanked by his foreman Carver. Last chance, Cole, Hale called. Step aside and let us do our work. Ethan looked at the 30 men facing them, looked at Clara standing beside him, chin up, refusing to back down, looked at the dam behind them, their dam, built with their own hands, and he made his choice. No, Ethan said. Hale's face hardened. Then you're a fool. Carver, take your men and tear it down. 10 men dismounted and started walking toward the dam. Ethan and Clara stood their ground. Please, Clara said, loud enough for all of them to hear. Before you do this, just listen. Some of the men hesitated. Carver kept walking. This dam isn't just for us, Clara continued, her voice shaking but clear. It's for all of you, for this whole valley. When the rains come, if they come, this water could save everyone's cattle. Feed everyone's families. Mr. Hale doesn't need it. He's got wells and money and more land than he knows what to do with. But you, she looked at each man in turn, you're working for wages. You're barely scraping by, and he's asking you to destroy the one thing that might help all of us survive. That's enough, Hale snapped. Carver, I said, I'm talking to them, not you, Clara interrupted. She stepped forward, and Ethan's heart nearly stopped because she was walking straight toward the armed men. My name is Clara Hayes. I came here from Ohio 2 months ago to marry a man who didn't want me. I had nothing. This man, she gestured at Ethan, gave me work when he didn't have to, gave me a chance when nobody else would. We built this dam together, with our own hands, our own blood, not for money, not for power, but because we needed something to believe in. The men had stopped walking. Even Carver had paused. You all know what it's like, Clara said, voice breaking now, working for someone else, hoping it's enough to feed your kids, watching everything dry up and blow away. This dam is hope, real, tangible hope. And Mr. Hale wants you to destroy it so he can control one more thing, so he can make sure nobody has a chance he doesn't give them. She's lying, Hale said. That dam is illegal, and you all know it. Maybe it is, Clara said. I don't know the law, but I know what's right. And destroying hope, destroying something built by people who have nothing left, that's not right. That's not what good men do. Silence fell across the pasture. 30 men, 2 people, and a dam that shouldn't exist. Then Pete Wilson, the young hand who'd delivered Hale's message, stepped forward. "She's right," he said quietly. "Wilson, get back in line," Carver growled. "No, sir." Pete looked at Hale. "I've worked for you 3 years, mister." "Hale, you've always paid fair, and I appreciated that. But this ain't right. Tearing down their dam won't help you. You've got more water than you need already. You're just doing it because you can." "I'm doing it because it's my legal right," Hale said coldly. "Doesn't make it right." Another man stepped forward, then another. Within moments, half of Hale's men had broken ranks, standing between their boss and the dam. Hale's face went purple with rage. "You're all fired, every one of you." "Then we're fired," Pete said. "But we ain't tearing down that dam." Carver looked at Hale, then at his men, then at the dam. Slowly he lowered the crowbar he'd been carrying. "Sorry, boss," he said. "But the boy's right. This ain't the job I signed up for." For a long, terrible moment, Ethan thought Hale might pull his gun. The man's hand actually went to his belt, trembling with fury. But then he stopped. Looked around at his men, former men now, standing against him. Looked at the 2 people who'd somehow turned his own army against him. "This isn't over," Hale said, voice shaking. "I'll have my lawyers tear you apart, Cole. I'll take everything you have." "You can try," Ethan said. Hale remounted his horse and rode off, followed by the handful of men who'd stayed loyal. The rest remained, looking awkward and uncertain. Pete Wilson walked over to Ethan and Clara. "Sorry about that, Mr. Cole. We should have said something sooner." "You said it when it mattered," Ethan replied. He looked at all of them, 20 men who'd just thrown away their jobs for something they believed in. "Thank you." "What happens now?" one of the men asked. Clara stepped forward. "Now we finish what we started. That dam needs reinforcement. The ranch needs work. And when the rains come, if they come, we make sure everyone in this valley gets water, not just us, everyone." Ethan looked at her, then at the men, then at the dam standing in the morning light. For the first time in 3 years, he let himself believe they might actually survive this. And maybe, just maybe, do more than survive. The men stood around in the morning sun looking lost, like soldiers after a battle who weren't sure which side had won. Pete Wilson kept glancing back toward where Hale had ridden off, his face pale. A few of the others shuffled their feet, reality settling in heavy. "We just gave up our jobs," one of them said finally. Big man with a gray beard looked about 50. "For a dam that might not even work." "It'll work," Clara said. "You sure about that, ma'am?" "No, but I'm sure it's worth trying." The man considered this, then nodded slowly. "Name's Frank Cooper. Worked for Hale 6 years. He looked at Ethan. "Guess I'm unemployed now." "We all are," another man said. Younger, maybe 30, with nervous eyes. "My wife's gonna kill me." "Mine too," someone else muttered. Ethan felt the weight of it then. These men had families, debts, lives that depended on steady wages. And they'd thrown it all away because Clara had asked them to see past their fear. "I can't pay you," Ethan said. "I got maybe $40 to my name, and that's gotta last until—" He stopped because he didn't know until when. "I got nothing to offer but hard work and bad odds." "That's more than Hale was offering," Pete said. He was asking us to tear down hope. At least this way, we're building something." "Building something don't feed families," Frank pointed out. "No, but maybe it feeds something else." Pete looked around at the others. "I don't know about you boys, but I'm tired of being told what to do by a man who's got more money than sense. Tired of watching good people lose everything while Hale adds another 0 to his accounts." He turned to Ethan. "You say you can't pay us. Fair enough. But if we help you finish this dam right, reinforce it proper, and the rains come, you'll share the water with folks who need it?" "Everyone gets water," Ethan said. "That's the deal." "Then I'm in." Pete stuck out his hand. Ethan shook it, feeling something tight in his chest loosen slightly. One by one, the other men came forward. Not all of them. 3 rode off after Hale, probably hoping to get their jobs back. But 17 stayed. 17 men who'd just bet their livelihoods on a stranger's promise. Clara started organizing them before Ethan could even think. She sent 5 men to gather more stone from the hills, another group to cut timber for reinforcement, a third to start digging drainage channels. She moved through them like she'd been running crews her whole life, voice clear and certain. "You're good at this," Ethan said when she paused for breath. "My father ran a store with 12 employees. I grew up watching him manage people." She wiped sweat from her forehead. "Turns out it's not that different from managing a damn crew. Except the damn crew might get us all killed." There's that. By noon, the north pasture looked like an anthill that had been kicked over. Men everywhere, hauling stone, cutting wood, digging channels. The dam was already finished, but they were making it stronger, adding height, reinforcing the base, creating spillways so the water wouldn't just blow out the whole structure when it finally came. If it came. Ethan worked alongside them, grateful for the distraction, but his mind kept circling back to the same problem. Hale wasn't going to let this go. The man had money, connections, pride. He'd find another way to hurt them. Around mid-afternoon, a wagon rolled up the valley road. Ethan's hand went to his rifle before he recognized the driver. Silas Marsh from the general store. The old man climbed down stiffly, looked at the organized chaos around the dam, and let out a low whistle. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. "You actually got Hale's men to turn on him." "Word travels fast," Ethan said. "Fastest thing in this county." Silas gestured at his wagon. "Brought supplies. Figured you'd need them. Got rope, more tools, some food for the crew." He paused. "No charge." Ethan stared. "Silas, don't argue with me, boy. I'm too old for arguments." The shopkeeper's face was serious. "What happened this morning?" "That's the first time anyone stood up to Hale in 10 years. Maybe ever. People are talking, and some of us figure it's about time we picked a side. Picking sides could cost you. Everything costs something. At least this way I can look at myself in the mirror." Silas clapped him on the shoulder. "Now show me this dam everyone's losing their minds over." By evening, 2 more wagons had arrived. The Johnsons brought food and blankets. Ben Miller, the man whose daughter had married Brennan instead of Clara, brought lumber and a guilty expression. "I heard what happened," he said to Clara. "With my daughter and that bastard Brennan, I'm sorry. If I'd known what kind of man he was..." "It's not your fault, Mr. Miller," Clara said. "Still, you deserved better." He looked at the dam, at the men working. "We all did." That night they made camp in the pasture. Someone built a fire. The women from town, Mary Johnson, Ben Miller's wife Ruth, even old Mrs. Patterson, who ran the boarding house, showed up with more food than 20 men could eat. They sat around the fire sharing stories, and for a few hours it felt almost like a celebration instead of a last stand. Pete Wilson pulled out a harmonica and played something slow and sweet. A few people sang along. Ethan sat on the edge of the circle, watching Clara talk with Mary Johnson, both of them laughing about something. The firelight caught her face, made her look younger, happier. "You've got feelings for her," Frank Cooper said, settling down beside Ethan. "I don't know what I've got." "Sure you do. I've been married 30 years. I know that look." Frank pulled out a pipe and lit it. "Question is, what are you going to do about it? Survive this mess first, then maybe figure out the rest. Life don't wait for convenient timing, son. Trust me on that." Ethan didn't answer, but Frank's words stayed with him as the night wore on and people started drifting off to sleep. Clara came and sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "They're good people," she said quietly. "Yeah. Think we can really do this? Make something that helps everyone? I think we have to try." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "I'm scared, Ethan." "Me too. But I'm glad I'm here. With you. With them." She paused. "Even if Hale destroys us, at least we tried to build something instead of just watching everything fall apart." Ethan put his arm around her shoulders. They sat like that until the fire burned down to embers, watching the stars wheel overhead, and neither of them said what they were both thinking. That tomorrow Hale would come back with lawyers and lawmen and whatever else he could buy, and they'd have to face it. The next 3 days were a blur of work. The crew expanded the dam, built proper spillways, reinforced the walls with timber and stone. More people came from town, not to work, but to watch, to see if this crazy thing might actually hold water. On the 3rd day, a rider came from Coldwater Junction, not one of Hale's men. The deputy sheriff, a young man named Garrett, who looked uncomfortable in his badge. Mr. Cole, he said, dismounting, I got papers for you. Ethan took them. Legal documents, dense with language he barely understood. But the gist was clear enough. Hale was suing him for water rights violation. There'd be a hearing in front of Judge Morrison in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, Ethan said. Yes, sir. You'll need to appear before the judge, answer the charges. Garrett shifted his weight. For what it's worth, Mr. Cole, I don't think this is right, but the law's the law. The law's whatever Hale pays it to be, Pete muttered. Garrett flushed but didn't argue. He rode off, leaving Ethan holding papers that might as well be a death sentence. Clara read over his shoulder. We need a lawyer. Can't afford one. Then we'll defend ourselves. Against Hale's legal team? We'll get torn apart. Maybe. She took the papers from him, folded them carefully. But we've got 2 weeks to prepare. And we've got something Hale doesn't. What's that? The truth. And people who'll speak it. She was right, of course. Over the next week, they organized their defense. Clara wrote down everything, when they'd built the dam, why they'd built it, what it meant for the valley. She interviewed the men who'd defected from Hale, got their stories in writing, tracked down old territorial laws about water rights. She worked like a woman possessed, staying up late by lamplight, filling page after page with neat handwriting. Ethan would find her at the kitchen table at midnight, eyes red from exhaustion, still writing. You need to sleep, he'd say. I'll sleep when we win. And if we don't win? She'd look up at him then, fierce and stubborn. Then I'll sleep knowing we fought with everything we had. The dam crew kept working too. They'd finished the main structure, so now they were building infrastructure around it. A system of channels to distribute water to different properties. Measurements to track flow. Pete Wilson, it turned out, had worked on irrigation before and knew more than he'd let on. We make this fair, Pete said, drawing maps in the dirt. Everyone gets allocated based on need, not money. Small ranchers get enough to survive. Big spreads like Hale's, they get what's left over. Hale's gonna fight that, Frank pointed out. Let him. He's already fighting us. Might as well give him something worth fighting over. Word spread through the valley. People started talking about the dam not as Ethan's project, but as something bigger, a commons, shared resource, the kind of thing that could change how the whole region survived drought. Naturally, Hale hated it. More legal papers arrived. Injunctions, restraining orders, demands that construction stop immediately. Each time Clara read them, filed them carefully, and kept working. He's trying to bury us in paperwork, she said. Is it working? No, but it's annoying. 10 days after the papers first arrived, another rider came to the ranch. Not Garrett this time. A man in an expensive suit, riding an expensive horse, carrying an expensive leather case. Ethan met him in the yard, rifle in hand. I'm not here to cause trouble, the man said quickly. My name is Robert Chen. I'm a lawyer from San Antonio. We can't afford a lawyer. I'm not asking for payment. Chen dismounted, opened his case. I've been following your case, Mr. Cole. What you're doing here, it's unprecedented. A community water system, managed collectively, outside of traditional property rights. His eyes gleamed. It's revolutionary. It's a dam. It's a challenge to the entire power structure of territorial water law. Chen smiled. And I'd like to help you defend it. Ethan stared at him. Why? Because I'm tired of men like Victor Hale using the law as a weapon to crush anyone who threatens their control. And because if you win this case, you'll set a precedent that could change everything. He paused. Also, my parents were farmers. They lost their land to a man like Hale. I became a lawyer to fight men like him. Clara came out onto the porch. We can't pay you, she said. I don't need payment. I need the case. Chen looked between them. Let me help you, please. They talked for 3 hours. Chen reviewed everything Clara had prepared, asked hundreds of questions, took pages of notes. As the sun set, he leaned back in his chair and whistled low. You've done remarkable work, he said to Clara. If I didn't know better, I'd say you'd been trained in law. Just store management and stubbornness. Best combination there is. He gathered his papers. All right, here's what we're dealing with. Hale's argument is based on riparian rights, the idea that landowners along a waterway have first claim to its water. It's established law, and it's on his side. So we lose, Ethan said. Not necessarily. Riparian rights assume the water is flowing, but this creek has been dry for 3 years. You're not diverting existing flow. You're capturing future rainfall that hasn't happened yet. Chen smiled. That's a different legal question entirely, and the law's murky there. Murky's better than hopeless, Clara said. Exactly. Now we also have community benefit to argue. You're not hoarding water for personal gain. You're creating a shared resource for the public good. That plays well, especially in front of a jury. There's no jury, Ethan said. Morrison's hearing this alone. Chen's smile faded. That's a problem. Judge Morrison is Hale's man. We know. Then we need to make our case so airtight, so publicly supported, that Morrison can't rule against us without destroying his own reputation. Chen stood. We have 4 days until the hearing. I'll need statements from everyone who's helped with the dam. Documentation of the drought conditions. Proof that Hale has adequate water from other sources. Can you get me all that? Clara was already reaching for her notes. I've got most of it here. Chen looked at her with something like admiration. You're wasted as a ranch hand, Miss Hayes. So I'm learning. Over the next 4 days, they built a case. Chen worked with Clara, shaping her raw documentation into legal arguments. They gathered signatures from 43 people in the valley who supported the dam, got statements from 3 different ranchers about how Hale had bought up their water rights and left them struggling. Ethan spent his time keeping the ranch running and trying not to think about what would happen if they lost. 43 people had signed their names to support him. 17 men had given up their jobs. If the judge ruled against them, all those people would have stuck their necks out for nothing. The night before the hearing, Ethan couldn't sleep. He went out to the porch and found Clara already there, wearing a shawl against the cool night air. Can't stop thinking about it? She asked. Every time I close my eyes, I see it going wrong. She was quiet for a moment. Then, even if we lose tomorrow, Ethan, even if Morrison rules against us and Hale tears down the dam, we still won something. How do you figure? We showed people they can stand up, that they don't have to accept things just because that's how they've always been. She turned to face him. 17 men walked away from Hale. 43 people signed their names against him. That's never happened before. Whatever happens tomorrow, that can't be undone. They'll suffer for it. Hale will make sure of that. Maybe. Or maybe we'll win and everything will change. Ethan wanted to believe that, wanted to hold on to the hope in her voice and let it carry him through whatever was coming. I don't know what I'm doing, he said quietly. I'm a rancher. I fix fences and feed cattle. I don't fight legal battles or lead movements or... He gestured helplessly. Any of this. None of us do. We're all just making it up as we go. Clara moved closer. But you gave me a chance when nobody else would. You built something impossible because it needed building. You stood in front of 30 armed men and said no. She reached up and touched his face. That's not nothing, Ethan. That's everything. He kissed her then, not because it was the right time or the smart thing to do, but because he couldn't not kiss her. She kissed him back, fierce and desperate and tender all at once. When they broke apart, she was crying. What's wrong? Ethan asked. Nothing. Everything. She laughed, wiping her eyes. I came here to marry a man who didn't want me. I thought my life was over. And then I found you, and this place, and something worth fighting for. She shook her head. I'm terrified of losing it. Me too. But I'm glad I found it. Even if tomorrow everything falls apart, I'm glad. They held each other on the porch until the sky started to lighten in the east. Then they went inside, got dressed in their best clothes, and prepared to face whatever came next. The hearing was set for 10 in the morning at the Coldwater Junction Courthouse, which was really just a big room in the back of the land office. By 9:30, the place was packed. People standing in the aisles, crowding the doorway, spilling out onto the street. Ethan sat at one table with Clara and Robert Chen. Across from them, Hale sat with 3 lawyers in expensive suits. The man looked calm, confident, like this was already decided. Judge Morrison came in at 10 sharp. He was 60, gray-haired, with the kind of face that had forgotten how to smile decades ago. He banged his gavel once. This is a hearing on the matter of Hale versus Cole regarding water rights and alleged illegal damming of the White Creek waterway. His voice was flat, bored. "Mr. Hale, your complaint." One of Hale's lawyers stood, tall man with silver hair and a voice like silk. "Your Honor, this is a simple matter of established law. The defendant has constructed an illegal dam on a waterway that flows through my client's property. This violates my client's riparian rights and constitutes theft of a natural resource." "The creek has been dry for 3 years," Chen said, standing. "Irrelevant. The waterway exists, and when rains return, my client has first rights to its flow. Even if those rains never reach his property because they're being hoarded upstream." "That's precisely the point, Your Honor. The defendant is—" "I'll hear arguments in turn," Morrison interrupted. "Mr. Hale's counsel may proceed." For the next hour, Hale's lawyers laid out their case. They cited precedent, territorial law, property rights. They made it sound simple, clean, obvious. Ethan was stealing water that belonged to Hale. When they finished, Morrison looked at Chen. "Your defense?" Chen stood. He was younger than Hale's lawyers, less polished. But when he started talking, his voice carried something they didn't have: conviction. "Your Honor, this case isn't about theft. It's about survival. The defendant built a dam on his own property to capture rainfall that hasn't fallen yet. He's not diverting existing flow because there is no existing flow. The creek is dry and has been for 3 years. He gestured to the document spread on the table. "We have meteorological records, witness statements, photographs. White Creek is a dead waterway." "That doesn't negate riparian rights," Hale's lead lawyer said. "Actually, it does. Riparian rights assume a flowing stream. They don't grant ownership of potential future rainfall." Chen picked up a thick volume. Territorial Code. Section 47 states that water rights attach to actual water flow, not theoretical future precipitation. The defendant is capturing rain that falls on his property. That's not theft. That's basic water conservation. Morrison frowned. "Are you arguing riparian rights don't apply?" "I'm arguing they don't apply to rain that hasn't fallen yet. And furthermore," Chen pulled out another document. "The defendant has declared his intention to share captured water with the community on a needs-based allocation system. This isn't private hoarding. It's a public commons." "That's nonsense," Hale's lawyer snapped. "You can't just declare something a commons and exempt it from property law." "Why not? The territory has precedent for shared grazing land, shared mineral rights, shared—" "Enough!" Morrison held up his hand. "I'll hear from the defendant himself. Mr. Cole, stand and state your case." Ethan's mouth went dry. He hadn't prepared a speech, didn't know what to say. He stood slowly, feeling 40 sets of eyes on him. "Your Honor, I built that dam because I was dying. My ranch was dying. The whole valley was dying." His voice came out rough, uncertain. "I didn't do it to steal from Mr. Hale. I did it because I needed something to hope for." "Hope doesn't override the law," Morrison said. "No, sir, but the law should serve people, not destroy them." Ethan looked at Hale. "Mr. Hale has more water than he needs. He's got wells, rights to 3 different creeks, land that'll survive another 10 years of drought. I've got 12 head of cattle and dirt so hard you can barely dig a grave in it. That dam is the difference between me surviving or losing everything my father built." "That's very moving," Hale's lawyer said dryly. "But it doesn't change the law." "Then maybe the law is wrong," Clara said. Everyone turned. She was standing now, facing the judge directly. "Miss Hayes, you're not a party to this case," Morrison said. "I'm the one who convinced him to build it. So if there's blame, it's mine too." Her voice was steady, strong. "Your Honor, I came to this valley with nothing. Mr. Cole gave me work when he didn't have to. We built that dam together with our own hands because we believed it could help people. And it has. 17 men left their jobs to help us finish it. 43 people signed a petition supporting it. This whole town is here because they believe in what we're trying to do." "Mob sentiment doesn't determine legal rulings," Morrison said. "No, but it should matter." "Well," Clara gestured to the packed room. "These people are fighting to survive, just like Mr. Cole, just like me. Mr. Hale has the law on his side. He has money and lawyers and power. But we have something he doesn't. We have each other. And we're asking you, begging you, to see that tearing down our dam doesn't serve justice. It just serves one man's greed." The room erupted. people shouting agreement, banging on walls, stamping feet. Morrison banged his gavel hard. "Order! I'll have order, or I'll clear this courtroom." The noise died down slowly. Morrison glared at Clara. "That kind of speech might work on crowds, Miss Hayes, but this is a court of law." He turned to Chen. "Do you have anything else?" "Just one thing, Your Honor." Chen pulled out a final document. A petition from the Territorial Water Commission. They've reviewed this case and issued a preliminary finding that cooperative water systems should be encouraged in drought-stricken regions. They're recommending that territorial law be amended to allow for exactly what Mr. Cole has built. Hale's lawyer grabbed the document, read it, and his face went red. "This is a recommendation, not a ruling. It has no legal force." "Not yet, but it shows the direction the law is moving." Chen looked at Morrison. "You can rule with the past, Your Honor, or you can rule toward the future." Morrison sat back, silent. The whole room held its breath. Finally, Morrison cleared his throat. The sound cut through the silence like a blade. "I'll take a recess to consider the arguments," he said. "Court will reconvene in 1 hour." He stood and walked out through the back door. The room exploded into conversation the moment he was gone. Ethan felt his legs go weak and sat down hard. "What does that mean?" he asked Chen. "It means he's thinking, which is better than an immediate ruling for Hale." Chen gathered his papers, but his hands were shaking slightly. "I've argued in front of Morrison before. He usually decides these things in 5 minutes. The fact that he needs an hour, that's something. Something good or something bad? I don't know." Clara reached over and took Ethan's hand. Her palm was cold and clammy. "We did everything we could." "Yeah." Hale stood and walked toward the door, his lawyers trailing behind him. As he passed their table, he stopped. "Enjoy your hour, Cole," he said quietly. "It's the last one you will have before I take everything from you." "You can try," Ethan said, but his voice lacked conviction. Hale smiled and left. The hour crawled by like a wounded animal. They went outside where the air was at least moving. People from town clustered around them, offering encouragement that felt hollow. Everyone knew what was at stake. Everyone knew Morrison was Hale's man. Pete Wilson came over with a canteen of water. "Whatever happens in there, mister. Cole, we ain't giving up. Might not be up to us. It's always up to us. Judges can make rulings all day long. Doesn't mean we have to follow them if they're wrong." "That's dangerous talk," Chen said. "Maybe, but it's true." Pete looked around at the crowd. "You think all these people showed up just to watch a hearing? They're here because they're ready to stand for something. Morrison rules against you. We'll appeal. We'll fight. We'll make so much noise they'll hear it in Washington." Ethan wanted to believe that, wanted to think that justice mattered more than money, but he'd lived too long in a world where the opposite was true. When the hour was up, they filed back inside. Morrison was already at his bench, face unreadable. He waited until everyone was seated, then banged his gavel once. "I've considered the arguments from both sides," he said. "This is not a simple case. The law regarding riparian rights is well established, but its application to a waterway that has been dry for an extended period is less clear." He paused, and Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. Additionally, the question of whether captured rainfall constitutes theft of downstream water rights has not been adequately tested in territorial courts. "Your Honor," Hale's lawyer began, but Morrison cut him off. "I'm not finished." The judge looked down at his notes. "The defendant has presented evidence of community benefit and shared resource management that complicates the property rights argument. Furthermore, the preliminary findings from the Territorial Water Commission, while not binding, suggest a shift in policy regarding cooperative water systems." He paused again, and the silence was suffocating. "Therefore, I'm ruling as follows." Morrison looked directly at Ethan. "The dam may stand contingent upon the defendant establishing a formal cooperative water management system with documented allocation procedures available to all landowners in the watershed. This system must be filed with the Territorial Land Office within 30 days and must include provisions for Mr. Hale's downstream access during periods of adequate flow." Ethan stared. "What?" "The dam stands," Morrison repeated, "with conditions. You'll need to create a formal system for managing the water fairly, and Hale gets his share when there's enough to go around. But you're not required to tear it down." He looked at Hale. "Your claim is partially upheld in that the defendant must ensure downstream rights are protected. but your request for immediate demolition is denied." The courtroom erupted, people shouting, crying, hugging each other. Hale's face went purple with rage, and his lawyers immediately started objecting, but Morrison banged his gavel until the noise died down. "My ruling is final. This hearing is adjourned." He left quickly, like he didn't want to stick around for the aftermath. Ethan sat frozen, trying to process what had just happened. "We won," Clara said, her voice barely a whisper. "Ethan, we won." "Not quite," Chen said, but he was smiling. "We got a conditional victory, but that's more than I expected. Morrison actually ruled on the merits instead of just rubber stamping whatever Hale wanted." "What happens now?" Ethan asked. "Now we do exactly what he ordered. Set up a formal cooperative, file the paperwork, create allocation rules." Chen started gathering his documents. "It's going to be work, but it's doable. And it sets the precedent we wanted." Hale was already gone, his lawyers with him. But as Ethan stood to leave, one of the lawyers, the silver-haired one who'd done most of the talking, approached their table. "Mr. Cole," he said. "A word?" Ethan tensed, but the lawyer's expression wasn't hostile, just tired. "My client is not pleased with this outcome," the lawyer said quietly. "He'll likely appeal, and he has other avenues he can pursue to make your life difficult." I figured. "But between you and me," the lawyer lowered his voice, "what you're doing here, it's good work. The law's on your side more than Hale wants to admit. Don't let him intimidate you into giving up." Before Ethan could respond, the lawyer turned and left. Outside, the celebration had already started. Someone had brought whiskey. People were passing bottles around, laughing, slapping each other on the back. Pete Wilson grabbed Ethan in a bear hug that nearly cracked his ribs. "We did it!" Pete shouted. "We actually beat the bastard!" "We got a conditional ruling," Ethan said. But Pete wasn't listening. Frank Cooper was there too, grinning like a fool. "Drinks are on me tonight, boys. Every man who stood up to Hale, you're drinking for free." Clara stood off to the side, watching the chaos with something like wonder on her face. Ethan worked his way over to her. "You all right?" he asked. "I don't know. I feel—" She laughed suddenly, bright and surprised. "I feel like maybe things can actually change. Like maybe people can win against power if they just stand together. Don't get too optimistic. Hale's not done with us." "I know, but for right now, just for today, let me believe we won something real." He pulled her close and kissed her forehead. Around them, the celebration continued, loud and messy and full of hope. But even as Ethan held Clara and tried to feel the joy everyone else was feeling, he kept thinking about Hale's face when Morrison delivered the ruling, the cold fury in those eyes. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next week was a whirlwind. Chen helped them draft the cooperative charter, and Clara organized meetings with every landowner in the watershed. 23 people showed up to the first meeting, held in the back room of Silas's store. Ethan stood in front of them feeling completely out of his depth. These were ranchers, farmers, people who'd been working this land longer than he'd been alive. And he was supposed to convince them to join some new system that might not even work. "Here's how I see it," he started, voice rough with nerves. "We've got one dam that can hold water when the rains come. We've got a valley full of people who need that water to survive. We can fight over it, let the big landowners take most of it, while the rest of us scramble for scraps. Or we can work together." "Easy to say when you're the one who built the dam," someone called out. "You're right. I built it on my land. But I'm offering to share it. Everyone in this room gets a vote on how the water's allocated. Everyone gets a say in the rules." Ethan looked around at their skeptical faces. "I know it sounds crazy. I know most of you don't trust that it'll work. Hell, I'm not sure it'll work either. But the alternative is watching Hale buy up all the water rights and squeeze us out one by one." That got their attention. Everyone in the room had seen Hale's tactics firsthand. Mary Johnson stood. "What about the big ranches? Hale's Place, the Patterson Spread. They use 10 times the water we do. How do we make sure they don't just take everything?" "We base it on need, not size," Clara said. She'd been quiet until now, standing in the corner with her notebook. "Every property gets enough water to survive, to keep livestock alive, grow basic crops. After that, larger operations can buy additional allocation, but only if there's surplus. And the money goes back into maintaining the system." "Who decides what's fair?" Tom Johnson asked. "We all do, by vote. One landowner, one vote. Even Hale? Even Hale. But he doesn't get more votes just because he's got more land. That caused a stir. The idea of Hale having the same voice as everyone else was almost revolutionary. I'll join, Silas said suddenly. Don't have any ranch land myself, but I got a stake in this valley surviving. Put me down for a vote in favor. One by one, others stood and voiced their support. Not everyone. 3 people walked out, and 2 more said they'd think about it. But by the end of the night, they had 17 members committed to the cooperative. It was a start. Over the next 2 weeks, they hammered out the details. Allocation formulas, maintenance responsibilities, dispute resolution procedures. Clara did most of the writing while Ethan handled the physical work, marking out distribution channels, installing measurement gauges, building access points. Chen filed the paperwork with the territorial office on day 29, 1 day before the deadline. He sent a copy to Hale's lawyers as required by the judge's order. The response came 3 days later. Ethan was working on the north fence line when he saw the riders coming. Not Hale's men this time. The territorial marshal and 2 deputies, all wearing badges and serious expressions. His stomach dropped. "Mr. Ethan Cole?" the marshal called. "That's me." The marshal dismounted and pulled out a document. "I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of fraud and unlawful restraint of trade." Ethan stared. "What?" "Mr. Victor Hale has filed a criminal complaint alleging that you coerced his employees into breaching their contracts and conspired to create an illegal monopoly on water resources." The marshal looked uncomfortable. "I'm required to take you into custody." "That's insane. I didn't coerce anyone. You can argue that in court. Right now, I need you to come with me." Clara came running from the house. "What's happening?" "They're arresting me." "On what grounds?" The marshal handed her a copy of the warrant. She read it quickly, face going pale. "This is fabricated. Hale's making things up." "Ma'am, I just enforced the warrants. Judge Morrison will hear the case tomorrow." "Morrison? The same judge who just ruled in our favor?" Clara's voice rose. "This is Hale buying another ruling." "Ma'am, please step back." "No, you can't just—" "Clara." Ethan put his hand on her shoulder. "It's all right. I'll go with them. Sort this out in court." "They're railroading you." "Maybe. But fighting them here won't help." He looked at the marshal. "Can I have a minute?" The marshal nodded. Ethan pulled Clara aside, lowering his voice. "Get Chen. Tell him what happened, and keep the cooperative moving forward. Don't let this stop you. Ethan, promise me." She was crying now, angry tears streaming down her face. "I promise." "Good." He kissed her quickly, then walked back to the marshal. "Let's go." They put him on a horse and rode into Coldwater Junction. The jail was a small building behind the land office, 3 cells that smelled like piss and despair. They locked him in the middle one. The marshal looked genuinely sorry. "For what it's worth, Mr. Cole, I don't think Hale's got a case. But until the judge hears it, I've got to hold you." "I understand. Your hearing's tomorrow at 9. You'll get a chance to defend yourself." "Thanks." The marshal left, and Ethan sat on the narrow cot, staring at the bars. He'd known Hale would retaliate, known the man wouldn't let the dam stand without one more fight. But this, criminal charges, the threat of real jail time, this was worse than he'd imagined. If Morrison ruled against him, he could end up in territorial prison. And even if he didn't, the legal fees and lost time would probably finish what the drought had started. The ranch would fail. Clara would have to leave. Everything they'd built would crumble. He must have dozed off because the next thing he knew, someone was calling his name. "Ethan, Ethan, wake up." He opened his eyes to find Clara standing outside his cell with Chen beside her. The lawyer looked furious. "This is outrageous," Chen said. "I've reviewed the charges. They're completely fabricated. Hale's claiming you threatened his men, forced them to break their contracts, created an illegal cartel to control water access. It's all lies." "Can you prove it?" "We can prove the men left voluntarily. We have their statements, but proving negative intent is harder." Chen ran his hand through his hair. "The real problem is Morrison's hearing this again. After ruling partially in our favor, Hale's clearly pressuring him to reverse course." "So what do we do?" "We bring the men," Clara said, "all 17 of them. We put them on the stand and have them testify that you never threatened anyone, never coerced anyone. We show Morrison that Hale's making this up." That could backfire, Chen warned. Those men breached their contracts with Hale. He could sue them individually. Let him try, Pete Wilson said from the doorway. Ethan hadn't even heard him come in. We're testifying, Mr. Cole. All of us. We'll tell the truth about what happened, and if Hale wants to come after us for it, he can try. Behind Pete, more men were filing in. Frank Cooper, Tom Johnson, Ben Miller. All the men who'd helped build the dam. We stand together, Frank said. That's what this whole thing has been about. We ain't letting you take the fall alone. Ethan felt something tight in his chest loosen. Thank you. Don't thank us yet, Pete said grimly. Thank us when we win. The hearing the next morning was even more crowded than the first one. Word had spread about the arrest, and people were angry. The room buzzed with tension as Morrison entered. The judge looked worse than before. Bags under his eyes, face drawn. He banged his gavel without meeting anyone's gaze. This is a preliminary hearing on criminal charges filed by Mr. Victor Hale against Mr. Ethan Cole, Morrison said. His voice was flat, mechanical. Mr. Hale's counsel may present evidence. The same silver-haired lawyer stood, but this time his demeanor was different, sharper, more aggressive. Your Honor, the evidence is straightforward. Mr. Cole systematically targeted my client's employees, convinced them to breach their contracts, and organized them into a conspiracy to monopolize water resources in this valley. He gestured to a stack of papers. We have the original employment contracts showing binding agreements. We have testimony from Mr. Hale that the defendant made threats. And we have the undeniable fact that 17 men abandoned their lawful employment to work for the defendant. Those men worked for free, Chen countered. There was no employment relationship. They worked in exchange for promised water rights. That's compensation. Your Honor, Chen said, this is absurd. Mr. Cole didn't coerce anyone. The men left Hale's employment voluntarily because they disagreed with his orders. That's not illegal. That's not conspiracy. That's free choice. Choice made under duress, Hale's lawyer shot back. What duress? Did Mr. Cole threaten them? Did he offer them money? Did he do anything except ask for help building a dam? He offered them something more valuable than money. He offered them a voice. He promised them control over a resource that rightfully belongs to my client. The dam is on Cole's property, Chen said, voice rising. He has every right to— Enough. Morrison held up his hand. I'll hear from the alleged victims. Mr. Hale, take the stand. Hale stood and walked to the witness chair like he owned it. He was dressed impeccably, every inch the successful businessman. When he spoke, his voice was smooth, confident. I've operated in this valley for 20 years, he said. I've always treated my employees fairly, paid them well, provided stable work. Then Mr. Cole comes along with his dam project and starts filling their heads with ideas about collective ownership and shared resources. He told them I was the enemy, that I was stealing from them, that if they stood with him, they'd have power I could never take away. Did he threaten you or your men directly? The lawyer asked. He didn't have to. The implication was clear. Join his cooperative or be left out in the cold when the water comes. That's a lie, Ethan said, standing up. Mr. Cole, sit down, Morrison snapped. He's lying, Your Honor. I never said any of that. You'll have your chance to speak. Sit down. Ethan sat, fists clenched. Beside him, Clara gripped his arm. Hale continued, spinning a story about intimidation and conspiracy that had nothing to do with reality. He made it sound like Ethan was some kind of mastermind, manipulating simple ranch hands into abandoning their duties. When he finished, Morrison looked at Chen. Your witness. Chen stood slowly. Mr. Hale, you claim the defendant threatened your business. But didn't you send men to his property to destroy his dam before any of this happened? I sent men to protect my legal water rights. By destroying property that wasn't yours? The dam is illegal. Judge Morrison ruled otherwise, but before that ruling, you sent armed men to tear it down. Isn't that true? Hale's jaw tightened. I was protecting my interests. By threatening violence against a man and woman who were building something on their own land? Chen leaned forward. Mr. Hale, isn't it true that you've systematically bought up water rights across this valley for years? That you've forced small ranchers to sell to you or watch their livestock die? I've made fair business deals. Fair to whom? You offered Mr. Cole $3,000 for land worth 10 times that. You've squeezed the Johnsons, the Millers, the Coopers. You've controlled every drop of water in this valley and charged whatever you wanted for access. Chen's voice was hard now. The truth is, Mr. Cole's dam threatens your monopoly. That's why you're here. Not because he coerced anyone, but because he dared to create an alternative to your control. That's speculation, Hale's lawyer objected. Is it? Chen turned to Morrison. Your Honor, I'd like to call witnesses. For the next 2 hours, the men testified. One by one, they took the stand and told their stories. How they'd worked for Hale, how they'd been ordered to destroy the dam, how they'd chosen to walk away instead. Pete Wilson spoke clearly, without hesitation. Mr. Cole didn't threaten nobody. He didn't offer us money or promises. He just asked for help, and we gave it because what Hale was asking us to do felt wrong. You broke your contract, Hale's lawyer said. Yes, sir, I did, and I'd do it again. Frank Cooper testified next. I've worked for men like Hale my whole life. Men who treat workers like tools, use them up and throw them away. Mr. Cole treated us like partners, like we mattered. That ain't coercion. That's respect. One by one, the stories piled up. And Ethan watched Morrison's face, trying to read which way the judge was leaning. Finally, it was Ethan's turn. He stood and walked to the witness chair, feeling every eye in the room on him. Mr. Cole, Morrison said, did you coerce or threaten Mr. Hale's employees? No, Your Honor. Did you promise them water rights in exchange for their labor? I promised to share water fairly if and when the rains came, same as I promised everyone in the cooperative. Did you intentionally interfere with Mr. Hale's business operations? Ethan hesitated. Then, I built a dam because my ranch was dying. I asked for help because I couldn't do it alone. If that hurt Hale's business, it's because his business was built on controlling something that should belong to everyone. That's not an answer to my question. Then no. I didn't intentionally interfere. I just tried to survive. Morrison sat back, silent. The room waited. I'll rule on this matter immediately, the judge said finally. Ethan's heart stopped. The charges are dismissed. The room erupted, but Morrison kept talking, voice rising over the noise. Mr. Hale, you've wasted this court's time with baseless accusations. The evidence shows clearly that Mr. Cole's actions, while perhaps economically damaging to your interests, were neither illegal nor coercive. Your employees made voluntary choices. Your attempt to criminalize those choices is rejected. He looked at Hale with something close to disgust. I'm fining you $500 for filing frivolous charges. This hearing is adjourned. He stood and left quickly, and this time Ethan knew why. Morrison had finally had enough of being Hale's puppet. Hale sat frozen, face white with rage. Then he stood and walked out without a word, his lawyers scrambling after him. The marshal unlocked Ethan's restraints. You're free to go, Mr. Cole. Ethan stood on shaking legs. Clara was there immediately, throwing her arms around him. It's over, she said. It's really over. Maybe, Ethan said, but for the first time he let himself believe it might be true. Outside, the celebration was even bigger than before. Someone had brought more whiskey. People were dancing in the street. Pete Wilson played his harmonica while Frank Cooper sang off-key. Chen pulled Ethan aside. This is good, better than good. Morrison essentially ruled that Hale's been abusing the legal system. That'll make it harder for him to bring future charges. What about the cooperative? It's legal and filed. As of today, you're officially operating the White Creek Water Cooperative with 23 member landowners. Chen smiled. Congratulations. You just changed the law. Ethan looked at Clara, at the celebrating crowd, at the valley spreading out beyond the town. Somewhere out there was his ranch, his dam, the future they were building together. We did it, he said softly. Clara smiled. We did. Now we just need one more thing. What's that? She looked up at the cloudless sky. Rain. Rain didn't come the next week, or the week after that. Summer rolled on brutal and cloudless, and the dam sat empty like a promise nobody could keep. The cooperative met twice more, voting on allocation procedures for water that didn't exist yet, and Ethan could see the doubt creeping into people's faces. What if it never rains? Mary Johnson asked at the third meeting. Then we're no worse off than before, Clara said, but even she sounded uncertain. The ranch work continued. Ethan and Clara fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Morning chores, maintaining the dam, managing the cooperative paperwork. At night, they'd sit on the porch and watch the sky, looking for clouds that never appeared. "You ever regret it?" Ethan asked one evening. "Staying here?" "Every day," Clara said. Then she smiled. "And not once." "That doesn't make sense." "Sure it does. I regret the hard parts, the uncertainty, watching you nearly get thrown in prison." She leaned against his shoulder. "But I don't regret finding something worth fighting for, worth staying for. Even if the rains never come?" "Even then." He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the smell of dust and soap and Clara. "I want to marry you." She went very still. "What?" "I know it's not. I don't have much to offer. The ranch is barely holding on, and we've got a dam full of nothing but hope. But I want you to stay. Not as hired help, as my wife." Clara pulled back to look at him. Her eyes were wet. "Ethan Cole, are you proposing to me on a dying ranch in the middle of a drought?" "Guess I am." "That's the worst romantic timing I've ever heard of." "Probably." She laughed, and it turned into a sob. And then she was kissing him hard enough to bruise. When they broke apart, she was crying and smiling at the same time. "Yes," she said. "Yes, you fool. Yes." They were married 3 days later in the back room of Silas's store. The whole town showed up. 23 cooperative members, the men who'd walked away from Hale, families who'd stood with them through the hearings. Robert Chen served as witness. Pete Wilson played his harmonica. Mary Johnson brought a cake that was more dust than flour, but tasted like celebration anyway. There was no preacher in Coldwater Junction, so Silas, who'd been a ship's captain 40 years ago, performed the ceremony with a book of maritime law open in front of him. "By the power vested in me by absolutely nobody," Silas said, grinning, "I pronounce you married. Ethan, kiss your wife before I change my mind." Ethan did. The room erupted in cheers and whistles. Claire's face was flushed, her dress was borrowed, and she'd never looked more beautiful. They spent their wedding night in the ranch house, in the bedroom that had been empty for 2 years. Clara had cleaned it out weeks ago, replacing Sarah's things with her own. It should have felt wrong, but somehow it didn't. Sarah would have liked Clara, Ethan thought, would have approved of someone who fought as hard as she did. "What are you thinking about?" Clara asked, curled against his chest. "Sarah. How she'd be happy I found you." Clara was quiet for a moment. "You loved her very much." "I did." "And you love me?" "I do." "Good." She kissed his shoulder. "Because I love you too, Ethan Cole, even if you did propose in the worst possible circumstances." "Could have been worse. Could have been in jail." She laughed, and the sound filled the house with something it had been missing. Life. Future. The possibility of more than just survival. The next morning, Ethan woke to Clara shaking him. Ethan, wake up." He opened his eyes. The room was still dark. "What's wrong?" "Look." She pointed to the window. He looked and saw nothing unusual at first. Then he noticed the light was wrong. Not the harsh brightness of summer dawn, but something softer, grayer. He got up and went to the window. The eastern sky was thick with clouds, dark and heavy, rolling in from the distance like a slow-moving army. "Is that?" Clara whispered. "Yeah." They dressed quickly and went outside. The air had changed, still hot, but there was moisture in it now. A heaviness that made every breath feel substantial. The clouds were building fast, piling up against each other, blocking out the stars. "It's going to rain," Clara said. Maybe." "No, it's going to rain. I can feel it." And she was right. By mid-morning, the whole sky had turned the color of old iron. Wind picked up, hot and fierce, tearing through the valley like it was angry at being away so long. Dust devils spun across the pasture. Ethan rode out to check the dam. The empty basin waited, dry and patient. The spillways they'd built were ready. The distribution channels were marked. Everything was prepared for water that might never come. He heard horses and turned to see riders approaching. For a moment his hand went to his rifle, but then he recognized them. Pete Wilson, Frank Cooper, Tom Johnson, Ben Miller. Behind them, More men. Then women. Then children. The whole cooperative, it looked like, riding out to the dam. Figured you might want company, Pete called. When it happens. If it happens, Frank corrected. It'll happen, Mary Johnson said, climbing down from her wagon. Look at those clouds. That's rain coming. They set up camp around the dam, maybe 40 people in all. Someone built a fire even though it was too hot for one. Someone else brought food. Kids ran around chasing each other while adults watched the sky and tried not to look too anxious. Clara found Ethan standing at the edge of the empty basin. Quite a crowd, she said. They believe in this more than I do. That's not true. Isn't it? I built this thing because I was desperate, because I needed something to hold on to. But them, he gestured at the gathered families. They're here because they actually think we can make something better. That's faith I don't have. Clara took his hand. Then borrow mine. I have enough for both of us. The first drops fell around 2 in the afternoon, fat and heavy, hitting the dry earth with small explosions of dust. Just a few at first, scattered and uncertain. Then more. Then a lot more. Someone shouted. A child squealed with delight. And then the sky opened up. Rain poured down like it was making up for 3 years of absence. Not a gentle rain, but a Texas thunderstorm, violent and overwhelming and absolutely beautiful. It hammered the ground, turned dust to mud in seconds, filled the air with the smell of wet earth that Ethan had almost forgotten existed. People were running into the rain, arms spread, faces turned upward. Kids were dancing. Mary Johnson was crying. Pete Wilson was whooping like a madman. Ethan and Clara stood at the dam's edge, watching water begin to flow down the channels toward the basin. At first just trickles, then streams, then rushing torrents as the whole watershed began funneling rainfall toward the structure they'd built. It's working, Clara said, shouting over the thunder. Ethan, it's working. The basin started to fill, slowly at first, then faster as more water poured in, brown and muddy, and the most beautiful thing Ethan had ever seen. Within an hour, there was a foot of water. Within 2 hours, 3 feet. The rain kept coming, and the dam held. Every joint, every stone, every piece of timber they'd placed with bleeding hands. It all held together. By evening, the basin was 6 feet deep and still rising. The spillways activated, channeling excess water downstream through the distribution network they'd built. Ethan checked every connection point, making sure nothing was failing, and found them all solid. When he got back to the main camp, soaked to the bone and exhausted, Clara threw her arms around him. We did it, she said. We actually did it. The dam did it. We just built it, defended it, fought for it. She pulled back to look at him. We changed everything, Ethan. The rain continued through the night. People took shelter under wagons and tarps, but nobody left. They wanted to see the dam fill, wanted to witness the moment their collective hope turned into something real. By morning, the basin was 12 feet deep. The rain had slowed to a steady drizzle, and the water was already starting to clear as sediment settled. Ethan stood at the edge, looking at what they'd created, a lake where there'd been nothing but dust and desperation. Frank Cooper came to stand beside him. How long will it last? If we're careful with the allocation, could be 6 months, maybe more if we get more rain this season. And everyone gets a share? Everyone who's part of the cooperative. That was the deal. Frank nodded slowly. You know what you've done here, don't you? You've proved something people thought was impossible. That we don't have to fight each other for scraps, that we can build something together. I just built a dam, Frank. No, you built a lot more than that. Over the next week, the distribution system was tested and refined. Water flowed through channels to each member property. Some people used it immediately for their stock tanks. Others let it fill cisterns and ponds. The Johnsons got enough water to plant a late crop. Ben Miller's cattle, which had been on the edge of dying, started putting on weight. And Hale got his allocation too. They delivered it according to the downstream rights Morrison had required. Ethan rode out personally to make sure it was done right. Hale met him at his property line, face cold and hard. Here's your water, Ethan said, as ordered by the judge. I don't want your charity. It's not charity, it's your legal share. Take it or don't, but we're following the ruling. For a long moment, Hale just stared at the water flowing through the channel onto his land. Then he said quietly, You think you've won. I think we all won, including you, if you'd see it. I see a man who took what was mine and convinced everyone else it was theirs. The water was never yours, Hale. It falls from the sky. We just caught it and shared it fair. Hale's jaw worked like he wanted to say more, but finally he just turned and walked away. Ethan rode home feeling something close to peace. But 3 days later, reality complicated things. A rider came from the territorial capital, not with legal papers this time, but with news. The Territorial Water Commission had officially adopted the White Creek Cooperative Model as recommended policy for drought management. Other valleys were already inquiring about how to set up similar systems. "You're famous," the messenger said, handing Ethan a letter from the commission. "They want you to testify before the territorial legislature about water rights reform." Ethan stared at the letter. "I don't know anything about legislatures." "You know about making water systems work. That's more than most of them know." After the messenger left, Ethan showed the letter to Clara. "You should go," she said immediately. "I can't leave the ranch. The cooperative's just getting started. We've got 17 good men who can handle things for a week. Pete and Frank know the system as well as you do." She took the letter from him. "Ethan, this is bigger than our ranch. This is a chance to help other people do what we did. I'm not a public speaker. You're the man who stood in front of armed men and told them no. You're the man who convinced a judge to change his mind. You can handle a legislature." She smiled. "And I'm coming with you." They made the trip to the Capitol 2 weeks later. Robert Chen came along to help with the legal testimony. The three of them rode into a city that felt overwhelming after months in Coldwater Junction. Buildings 3 stories high, streets packed with people, noise and crowds, and more life than Ethan had seen in years. The legislative hearing was held in a building with marble floors and high ceilings that made Ethan feel small. 50 territorial legislators sat in rows waiting to hear about water reform. When it was his turn to speak, Ethan stood at a podium and looked out at all those expectant faces. His prepared remarks, which Clara had helped him write, disappeared from his mind completely. So he just told the truth. "I'm a rancher," he said. "Had a place going under from drought. Built a dam because I was desperate. Asked my neighbors for help because I couldn't do it alone. They helped because we were all desperate together." He paused. "What we figured out wasn't complicated. Share the water fair, give everyone a voice. Don't let money decide who survives. That's it. That's the whole system." "And it's working?" one legislator asked. "Working better than anything else we tried. 23 families getting water now, none of them dying, all of them working together instead of fighting." Ethan looked around the room. "You want to know if it's revolutionary?" "I don't know, but it's keeping people alive. Seems like that should matter more than politics." The room was silent for a moment. Then one legislator started clapping. Then another. Within moments, the whole chamber was applauding. Clara squeezed his hand. Chen was grinning like a fool. 2 days later, the territorial legislature passed the Water Cooperative Act, establishing legal frameworks for community-managed water systems across the territory. It wouldn't solve everything. There'd still be fights, still be people like Hale trying to control resources. But it was a start. They rode home through country that looked different than when they'd left. Storm clouds still gathered in the afternoons. Green was starting to show through the brown in places. The whole land felt like it was waking up from a long sleep. When they crested the ridge above the Double C Ranch, Ethan stopped his horse. The valley below was transformed. The dam's basin was full, water sparkling in the sunlight. The distribution channels were flowing. And in the pastures there was grass. Actual green grass, thin and new, but growing. "Look at that," Clara whispered. Ethan couldn't speak. He just sat there staring at land that had been dead for 3 years, showing signs of life. They rode down to the house to find Pete Wilson and Frank Cooper waiting on the porch. "Welcome back," Pete called. "How was the Capitol?" "They passed the law," Ethan said, climbing down. "Water cooperatives are legal across the territory now." "Hot damn," Frank said. "We're official." "How are things here?" "Good. Great, actually." Pete gestured toward the north pasture. "We've had 3 more families asked to join the cooperative. And the cattle, Ethan, your 12 head, are up to 15. Had 3 calves born while you were gone." Ethan felt something crack open in his chest. 3 calves. New life on a ranch that had been dying. There's more, Frank said, grinning. Hale came by. What did he want? To join the cooperative. Ethan stared. What? Swear to it. Showed up 2 days ago, formal as you please, asking about membership terms. Pete laughed. Said his wells are running low and he needs a reliable water source. Asked if the cooperative would consider his application. What did you tell him? Told him he'd have to apply like everyone else. 1 vote, same as anybody. No special treatment. Frank's grin widened. He didn't like it, but he filled out the paperwork. Clara started laughing. Victor Hale joining our cooperative. Never thought I'd see that. Me neither, Ethan admitted. But the rules are the rules. If he applies properly, follows the allocation system, he gets in like anyone else. Even after everything he did? Especially after everything he did? Shows the system works even for people who fought it. That evening, Ethan and Clara walked out to the dam. The sun was setting, painting the water gold and red. All around the basin, channels flowed outward like veins carrying life to the valley. You know what I realized? Clara said. When I got off that train 3 months ago, I thought my life was over. Thought I'd made the biggest mistake possible coming here. And now? Now I think getting abandoned at that station was the best thing that ever happened to me. She turned to face him. Because it brought me to you, to this place, to something real. Ethan pulled her close. I was dead when you arrived. Going through motions, waiting to fail. You brought me back. We brought each other back. They stood there as the sun sank below the hills and the first stars appeared. Behind them, the ranch house showed warm lamplight through the windows. Their home. Their life. There's something else, Clara said softly. Something I need to tell you. What? She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. I'm pregnant. About 6 weeks, I think. Ethan's breath caught. We're going to have a baby. Around spring, if my calculations are right. Couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. A baby. New life in a valley that was learning to live again. Say something, Clara said, sounding nervous now. Ethan kissed her, long and deep, trying to pour everything he felt into that single moment. When they broke apart, he was crying. I love you, he said. I love you and I'm terrified and I can't believe this is real. It's real. She was crying too. We're real. All of this is real. They walked back to the house hand in hand, and Ethan thought about everything that had happened since that day at the railway station. The dam, the fight, the cooperative, the legislative victory. All of it had seemed impossible at the start, but they'd done it anyway. 6 months later, the valley was unrecognizable. Regular rains had returned, filling the dam basin 3 times over. The distribution system was working smoothly, with 31 member properties now. Grass covered the hills in a green carpet. Cattle were healthy. Crops were growing. The Double C Ranch had 40 head of cattle now. The barn roof was fixed. The house had a fresh coat of paint, and in the small bedroom upstairs, Clara had prepared a nursery. She was 8 months pregnant, moving slowly but still managing the cooperative's bookkeeping with the same fierce efficiency she'd brought to everything else. The baby kicked constantly, like it couldn't wait to be born into this new world. On a warm March morning, Clara went into labor. Ethan rode for the doctor in Coldwater Junction, but Mary Johnson and Ruth Miller arrived first. They set up in the bedroom, boiled water, laid out clean towels, and told Ethan to get out and let them work. He paced the porch for 6 hours, terrified. Pete and Frank showed up and tried to distract him with cooperative business, but he couldn't focus on anything except the sounds coming from upstairs. Finally, just as the sun was setting, he heard it. A baby's cry, strong and loud and alive. Mary came down the stairs grinning. You've got a daughter, Ethan, and Clara's fine, tired, but fine. He took the stairs 3 at a time. Clara was propped up in bed, sweaty and exhausted and radiantly beautiful, holding a tiny bundle. She looked up when he entered, and her smile could have lit the whole valley. Come meet your daughter, she said. Ethan crossed to the bed on shaking legs. Clara pulled back the blanket, and there she was, tiny, red-faced, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that were trying to focus on this bright new world. She's perfect, Ethan whispered. She's ours. Clara placed the baby in his arms. What should we name her? Ethan looked down at his daughter, feeling the weight of her in his arms. This small person who represented everything he'd fought for, everything he'd built, every impossible thing that had become real. Hope, he said. Her name is Hope. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Hope Cole. It's perfect. They sat together as the sun set outside. Three people who hadn't existed as a family 3 months ago, now bound together in a house that had learned to live again. Over the next year, the valley continued to transform. The cooperative expanded to 47 members. Other regions began establishing their own systems based on the White Creek model. The territorial government created a water management bureau to oversee cooperative development. Victor Hale remained a member of the cooperative, though he never spoke at meetings and paid his dues without comment. Ethan saw him sometimes, riding the boundaries of his vast property, and wondered what the man thought about how things had turned out. One day, about a year after Hope was born, Hale rode up to the ranch house. Ethan met him in the yard, wary but not hostile. "Mr. Cole," Hale said, not dismounting, "I wanted you to know I'm leaving, selling my property to the Patterson family, moving back east." Ethan absorbed this. "Why?" "Because I don't belong here anymore. This valley, it's become something I don't understand, something I don't know how to control." Hale looked toward the dam. "You changed everything, made it so money doesn't matter as much as cooperation. I don't know how to operate in that world." "You could learn." "I'm too old to learn new ways." Hale met his eyes. "I still think what you did was theft, but I also think—" He paused. "I think maybe the law needed changing. Maybe you were right, and I was wrong. I don't like admitting that, but there it is." "Thank you for saying so." Hale nodded once, then turned his horse and rode away. Ethan never saw him again. The Pattersons, when they took over Hale's property, immediately joined the cooperative and became active participants in valley management. The land that had been controlled by one man's greed became part of the commons, and everyone prospered. 5 years after the dam was built, Ethan stood on the ridge above his valley, watching his daughter play in grass that grew thick and green. Hope was almost 5, wild and fearless and full of questions. Clara was pregnant again, due in 2 months with a son they planned to name after Ethan's father. The Double C Ranch ran 100 head of cattle now. The cooperative had grown to 72 members across 3 valleys. The dam had been reinforced twice and expanded once. The whole region was thriving. Pete Wilson had been elected cooperative president. Frank Cooper managed the distribution system. Mary Johnson kept the books. It had become something bigger than any one person, which was exactly what it needed to be. Robert Chen visited sometimes, bringing news from the capital. The Water Cooperative Act had been adopted by 5 other territories. Federal legislation was being considered. The revolution they'd started in one small valley was spreading. Clara came to stand beside Ethan on the ridge, her hand resting on her swollen belly. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Everything. How it started. Where we are now." He put his arm around her shoulders. "How I almost lost all of this before it began." "But you didn't. We didn't. No, we built something instead." Hope came running up the hill, breathless and excited. "Papa! Mama! There's new calves in the south pasture. Can I go see them?" "After dinner," Clara said. "But Mama—" "After dinner, Hope. And you need to wash up first." Hope groaned but ran back toward the house. Ethan and Clara followed more slowly, hands intertwined. As they walked, Ethan thought about the railway platform where he'd first seen Clara, how close he'd come to walking away, how one decision to help a stranger had changed everything. "You know what I'm grateful for?" he said. "What?" "That train being late, that Brennan being a coward, that you being brave enough to stay." He stopped and turned to face her. "Every impossible thing that had to happen for us to end up here." Clara smiled. "Nothing impossible about it, just 2 desperate people who decided to build something instead of giving up. Is that all it was? That's all it ever is. Someone deciding to try, to fight, to believe something better is possible." She kissed him softly. "We just did it together." They walked the rest of the way to the house as the sun set over the valley, over the dam that held life, over the land that had learned to grow again, over the community they'd built from dust and hope and stubborn refusal to accept that things couldn't change. And in that moment, Ethan Cole, who'd lost everything and found it all again, realized he had everything he'd ever needed. Not just survival, not just hope, but love, family, purpose, and a future worth living for. The dam had saved the land, but Clara had saved him. And together, they'd saved each other. The story that started with abandonment and desperation ended with abundance and joy. The valley that had been dying was alive. The man who'd been broken was whole. And the woman who'd come west expecting one life had found something infinitely better. They'd built more than a dam. They'd built a life. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.